Millionaire tech CEO sleeps with waitress. Discovers she's pregnant with twins and more. Zara Rodriguez counted her crumpled bills for the third time. Fingers stained with coffee and grease from another endless shift. $47 in tips. Not enough for nursing school tuition, barely enough for groceries, and definitely not enough to silence the growing fear of the children. Have you ever wondered if love can truly conquer the most impossible circumstances? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The DNA test results trembled in Marcus Blackwell's hands as he stared at the impossible truth. The twins he'd raised for 6 months weren't his. They belonged to the brother who'd betrayed him and vanished. But the real shock came when he realized Dylan was alive, watching, and had been closer than anyone imagined. Have you ever discovered that your entire life was built on a lie? This billionaire's world was about to collapse in ways he never saw coming. Stay with me as we uncover a deception so deep, it will leave you questioning everything you think you know about family and betrayal. Let me take you back to where this devastating story began. Zara Rodriguez counted her crumpled bill for the third time, her fingers stained with coffee and grease from another endless shift at Bella Vista. $47 in tips. Not enough for nursing school tuition, barely enough for groceries, and definitely not enough to silence the growing fear in her chest. She pressed her hand against her still flat stomach, feeling the secret she couldn't tell anyone. 3 months pregnant, and the father had vanished like smoke. David Black, if that was even his real name, had swept into her life with expensive dinners and promises, then disappeared without a trace. No phone number, no address, nothing but memories of his piercing blue eyes and the devastating news from her doctor. The restaurant's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Zara wiped down the last table. Her sister Isabella would be waiting at their cramped studio apartment, probably doing homework by the light of her phone to save electricity. Their grandmother in Texas needed medication money again. The pile of bills on their kitchen counter grew taller each week. Zara's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again, she'd been getting these calls for weeks. Silence on the other end. Then a click. Sometimes, expensive gifts appeared at their apartment door with no return address. A silk scarf, gourmet chocolates, items that cost more than she made in a month. Tonight was different. Tonight, she found an envelope taped under her car windshield. Her hand shook as she tore it open. Inside, a photograph of herself leaving the doctor's office and written in elegant handwriting. Some secrets can't stay hidden forever. Have you ever felt like someone was watching your every move? Zara's nightmare was just beginning. Marcus Blackwell stood alone in his glass penthouse, watching news anchors dissect his company's spectacular failure on every channel. Technova Industries had lost $2 billion in a single day. His revolutionary AI home system had malfunctioned nationwide, causing chaos from coast to coast. Smart homes locked families out in freezing weather. Security systems triggered false alarms. Kitchen appliances turned on randomly at 3 in the morning. The lawsuits were already pouring in. At 24, Marcus had been hailed as the next Steve Jobs. Tonight, he was Seattle's biggest failure. His hands trembled as he reached for his anxiety medication. The bottle was empty. He'd been taking double doses for weeks, ever since the nightmares about Dylan started again. His identical twin brother had vanished 3 years ago after stealing $12 million from their company. The betrayal had nearly destroyed everything Marcus built. The FBI had declared Dylan dead after finding his car abandoned on a bridge. But Marcus knew better. He felt his twin's presence like a phantom limb, there but not there. Dylan was alive somewhere, probably laughing at Marcus's misery. The penthouse felt like a prison tonight, 60 floors above the city, surrounded by luxury that meant nothing when you had no one to share it with. Marcus had everything money could buy and absolutely nothing that mattered. He grabbed his coat and headed for the elevator. He needed air. He needed to feel human again. The streets of downtown Seattle were nearly empty at this hour. Marcus pulled his hood up and walked aimlessly, letting the rain soak through his designer jacket. For the first time in months, he felt invisible. No cameras, no reporters, no board members questioning his every decision. That's when he saw the warm glow of Bella Vista restaurant. What would you do if everything you built was crumbling around you? Marcus was about to make a choice that would change 2 lives forever. The last customer had left Bella Vista an hour ago, but Zara couldn't bring herself to lock up. She needed the overtime, and the quiet gave her space to think. The pregnancy test hidden in her locker seemed to burn through the metal, a constant reminder of her impossible situation. The bell chimed as someone pushed through the front door. "We're closed," she called out, not looking up from the table she was cleaning. "I know. I need somewhere to sit for a minute." Zara turned and nearly dropped her rag. The man standing in her restaurant looked like he'd stepped off a magazine cover, but his expensive clothes were soaked with rain. His dark hair was disheveled, his blue eyes rimmed with exhaustion. Something about his face made her stomach flip, but not from morning sickness. He looked familiar, but she couldn't place where she'd seen him. "Rough night?" she asked, pouring him coffee without being asked. Marcus laughed bitterly. "Rough life. You probably saw the news. Technova Industries? That disaster is mine." Zara studied his face. She didn't follow tech news, but she recognized pain when she saw it. "I don't know anything about that, but you look like someone who needs to talk." For the next 2 hours, they sat in the empty restaurant sharing stories. Marcus told her about the pressure of running a billion-dollar company before his 25th birthday. Zara spoke about her mother's death, her dreams of nursing school, the weight of supporting her family. Neither mentioned their deepest secrets. Marcus didn't tell her about Dylan, about the nightmares, about the crushing loneliness of being Seattle's youngest billionaire. Zara didn't mention the pregnancy, the mysterious gifts, the growing certainty that someone was watching her. But something electric passed between them. When Marcus reached across the table to touch her hand, Zara felt a jolt of recognition that made no sense. His touch was familiar, as if she'd felt those fingers on her skin before. "I should go," Marcus whispered, but his eyes said the opposite. "You should," Zara agreed, but she didn't pull her hand away. The rain had stopped when they finally left the restaurant together. Marcus's penthouse was only 6 blocks away. The invitation hung unspoken in the air between them. Have you ever met someone who changed your life in a single night? For Marcus and Zara, this was that moment. What neither of them noticed was the figure standing in the shadows across the street, watching their every move through the lens of a telephoto camera. Dr. Peterson's words echoed in Zara's mind as she sat in her car outside the medical clinic. 16 weeks pregnant, not 12 weeks like she'd calculated. 16. The timeline was impossible to ignore now. She hadn't been pregnant when she met Marcus that night 3 weeks ago. She was already carrying another man's child, David Black's child. Zara's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. Marcus had given her his private number, the one reserved for family emergencies and board meetings. Using it felt like crossing a line she could never uncross. But what choice did she have? Isabella needed school supplies. Their grandmother's medication cost $300 a month. The rent was due in 5 days, and Bella Vista barely paid enough to cover utilities. Marcus answered on the first ring. "Zara, is everything okay?" The concern in his voice made her chest tighten. He barely knew her, yet he sounded genuinely worried. When was the last time anyone had cared about her well-being? "I need to see you," she said. "It's important." They met at Pike Place Market, far from the financial district where Marcus might be recognized. He looked different in daylight, younger, more vulnerable. The weight of his company's failure showed in the dark circles under his eyes. "I'm pregnant," Zara said without preamble. Marcus went completely still. A vendor called out prices for fresh salmon nearby. Tourists laughed and took photos. Life continued around them while their world stopped. "The baby, is it?" "Yes," Zara lied, the word burning her throat. "It's yours." What she didn't expect was Marcus's immediate response. No questions about timing, no demands for proof, no accusations. Instead, he reached across the small cafe table and took her hands. "Marry me." "What?" "I grew up without a father. I know what that does to a kid. My child won't experience that. Ever." Zara stared at him. "Marcus, you don't understand. We barely know each other. I'm a waitress from Texas. You're. I'm someone who takes responsibility for his actions. Marcus's voice was firm, decisive. I'm someone who won't let his child grow up wondering why daddy didn't want them. The proposal wasn't romantic. It was a business transaction wrapped in nobility. But it was also a lifeline when Zara was drowning. The media will destroy us, she whispered. Let them try. Will you marry me, Zara Rodriguez? She thought about Isabella's college fund, about their grandmother's medical bills, about giving her unborn children a future she could never provide alone. Yes. Would you marry someone you barely knew to secure your child's future? Zara had just made that impossible choice. What she didn't see was the photographer hidden behind a flower stall, capturing every moment of their conversation. The headlines were already being written. Tech billionaire's secret baby mama. The fairy tale was about to become a nightmare. Seattle's courthouse had never seen a wedding quite like this one. Marcus Blackwell, worth $4 billion, stood next to Zara Rodriguez, who'd borrowed her interview dress from a thrift store. Isabella held a bouquet of grocery store daisies, the only witness to their union. Judge Williams had married thousands of couples, but none where the groom's security team outnumbered the wedding party 3-1. Paparazzi swarmed the courthouse steps, shouting questions that made Zara's cheeks burn. Is this a publicity stunt? How long have you been together? Are you pregnant with his baby? Marcus's jaw tightened with each question, but he kept his arm around Zara's waist, projecting a confidence she didn't feel. The simple gold band on her finger felt foreign, heavy with the weight of their deception. The ceremony lasted 7 minutes. No vows, no kiss, just legal words that bound them together for better or worse. As they signed a marriage certificate, Zara noticed Marcus's hands were steadier than hers. You can still change your mind, she whispered. Can you? The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither wanted to explore. Moving into Marcus's penthouse felt like stepping into another world. 60 floors of glass and steel, automated everything, and a view that stretched to the Olympic Mountains. Zara's entire apartment could fit in his master bedroom closet. This is temporary, Marcus said, showing her to the guest suite. Until we figure out the long-term arrangement. Temporary. The word stung more than it should have. Isabella was mesmerized by the smart home technology, talking to the AI assistant and watching the walls change color with voice commands. But Zara felt like an intruder. Every surface was pristine, expensive, untouchable. The master bedroom remained off limits. They were married on paper, nothing more. That night, as Zara lay in Egyptian cotton sheets that cost more than her monthly salary, she heard Marcus pacing in his office. Through the thin walls, she caught fragments of heated phone conversations with his board of directors. Poor judgment, company reputation, gold digger scandal. Each word was a reminder that their marriage had made everything worse for him. Technova's stock price had dropped another 10% after news of their wedding broke. Business magazines were calling it the most expensive mistake in tech history. But Marcus never blamed her. Not once. The next morning, Zara found an envelope that had been slipped under her door sometime during the night. Her name was written in the same elegant handwriting she'd seen before. Inside was a wedding photo she'd never seen taken. Her and Marcus signing the marriage certificate. In the background, barely visible, stood a man who looked exactly like her new husband. The note was simple. Congratulations on your wedding, Mrs. Blackwell. Some gifts take time to unwrap. Have you ever felt trapped in a decision you can't take back? Zara was beginning to understand that marrying Marcus had made her a target, not protected her. Somewhere in Seattle, Dylan Blackwell smiled as he watched the news coverage of his brother's wedding. Everything was going according to plan. 3 weeks into their marriage, Zara still felt like a guest in her own home. Marcus left for the office at 6 each morning, returning after midnight smelling of stress and expensive cologne. They communicated through polite, small talk and sticky notes on the granite countertops. The pregnancy was showing now. Designer maternity clothes appeared in her closet without explanation. Marcus's assistant handling the details of their manufactured life. Board meetings ran longer, investor calls grew more heated, and Technova's reputation hung by a thread. But the gifts kept coming. This morning, Zara found a baby monitor in the nursery they hadn't finished preparing. Not just any monitor, a top-of-the-line model that could track heartbeats, breathing patterns, and had night vision capabilities. The accompanying note made her blood freeze. Someone needs to keep the babies safe. Babies, plural. Zara hadn't told anyone she was carrying twins. The ultrasound confirming it was locked in her personal medical file. Only she, her doctor, and Marcus knew. The phone rang while she stood holding the monitor, her hands trembling. Hello. Silence. Then a man's voice, warm and familiar. How are you feeling, beautiful? Pregnancy, treating you well. The voice sent ice through her veins. It sounded exactly like Marcus, but different somehow. Rougher around the edges, more dangerous. Who is this? Someone who's been watching over you. Someone who cares about those babies more than you know. The line went dead. Zara called Marcus immediately, but his assistant said he was in an emergency board meeting. Technova was facing a class action lawsuit. 3 more executives had resigned. The company Marcus built was hemorrhaging money and talent. That evening, Marcus came home looking like he'd aged 5 years in one day. The board wants me to resign, he said, pouring himself 3 fingers of whiskey. They think I'm too distracted. That marrying you is proof I can't make rational decisions anymore. Maybe they're right, Zara said quietly. Marcus's eyes snapped to hers. What do you mean? You don't know me, Marcus. You married a stranger carrying a stranger's babies. That's not rational. That's insane. For a moment, she thought he might agree. Instead, he crossed the room and knelt beside her chair, placing his hand gently on her growing belly. I don't care whose DNA they carry. They're mine now. You're mine now, and I protect what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel safer than she had in months, until she remembered the phone call. Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Always. Do you have any siblings? Anyone who might look like you? Marcus's face went white. His hand froze on her stomach. Why would you ask that? Zara told him about the calls, the gifts, the voice that sounded exactly like his. With each detail, Marcus's expression grew darker. Dylan, he whispered. Who's Dylan? My twin brother. My identical twin brother, who's supposed to be dead. What would you do if your past refused to stay buried? Marcus was about to learn that some ghosts refused to remain quiet. Labor came 2 weeks early, hitting Zara like a freight train while Marcus was in Tokyo trying to salvage a crucial business deal. She called him from the hospital bed, crying through contractions that felt like her body was tearing apart. I'm coming home, Marcus said immediately. Don't you dare have those babies without me. It's too late, Zara gasped. They're coming now. 16 hours later, Marcus burst into Seattle General's maternity ward still wearing his travel clothes, his hair disheveled from the 13-hour flight. Zara had never been so happy to see anyone in her life. The twins were perfect. Emma arrived first, screaming her displeasure at the world with impressive volume. Ethan followed 12 minutes later, quieter but equally determined to make his presence known. Marcus held them both, tears streaming down his face in a way that made Zara's chest tight with emotion. This man had turned his entire life upside down for children he barely knew were coming. Whatever his flaws, Marcus Blackwell was a man who kept his promises. But as the hours passed, something began gnawing at the edges of everyone's consciousness. The babies didn't look like Marcus. Not even a little bit. Marcus had distinctive features. Sharp cheekbones, a cleft in his chin, eyes so blue they were almost violet. The babies had softer faces, different bone structure, and eyes that seemed to shift between green and gray depending on the light. Dr. Martinez tried to reassure them. Babies change so much in their first year. Features develop, coloring shifts. You'd be amazed how different they can look from their parents initially. But the nurses whispered. Zara caught their sideways glances, their meaningful looks when they thought no one was watching. Marcus's mother arrived on day 2, took one look at the twins, and pulled her son into the hallway for a conversation Zara could hear through the thin walls. Those children don't look anything like our family. Marcus, not you, not me, not your father. I think you need to consider the possibility that... Don't. Marcus's voice was dangerously quiet. Don't finish that sentence. I'm just saying a simple DNA test would. Would what, mother? Prove that I'm a fool? That I married someone who played me for my money? You think I haven't considered that? Zara's heart stopped beating. But it doesn't matter, Marcus continued. I made a choice. I committed to this family. Whether those babies share my DNA or not, they're mine. End of discussion. Zara closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. Marcus suspected the truth, but he was choosing to love them anyway. The guilt was eating her alive. On day 3, while Marcus was signing discharge papers, Zara received a visitor. A man in an expensive suit who looked exactly like her husband, but carried himself differently. Looser, more confident, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Hello, Zara. Mind if I meet my children? Dylan Blackwell had finally decided to come home. Have you ever known a truth that could destroy everything you love? Zara was about to discover that some secrets refuse to stay hidden, no matter how desperately you want to protect them. Marcus sat alone in his office at 3 in the morning, staring at the sealed envelope that contained the DNA test results. He'd ordered them secretly 2 weeks ago, unable to ignore what everyone else was thinking. The babies were 4 months old now. Emma had Marcus's stubborn streak, but Dylan's green eyes. Ethan smiled exactly the way Dylan used to as a child. Crooked, mischievous, utterly charming. Marcus had spent 3 years believing his twin brother was dead. 3 years mourning, raging, and finally accepting that Dylan had chosen death over facing the consequences of his crimes. But the man who'd visited Zara in the hospital wasn't a ghost. Marcus tore open the envelope with shaking hands. The results were clinical, definitive, probability of paternity, 0%. But it was the DNA profile that made Marcus's blood turn to ice. The genetic markers were achingly familiar because he'd seen them before. In Dylan's medical records, kept on file since their childhood when their mother obsessed over every detail of their health. The twins weren't his children. They were Dylan's. His brother had been alive this entire time, watching Marcus fall in love with Zara, watching him marry her, watching him claim children that belonged to the man who'd betrayed him. The office door opened without a knock. Zara stepped inside, wearing one of his old shirts, her hair messy from sleep. You've been in here for hours. The babies. Whose babies? Marcus's voice was deadly calm. Zara stopped moving. The color drained from her face. What do you mean? Marcus held up the DNA results. I mean, whose babies are they really, Zara? Because they're sure as hell not mine. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. When Zara finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. How long have you known? I suspected from the beginning. The timeline never made sense. You were already pregnant when we met, weren't you? Tears streamed down Zara's face, but she nodded. Who's David Black? Marcus asked. Zara's sob told him everything he needed to know. He's Dylan, Marcus said. My brother. My identical twin brother who's supposed to be dead. The man who stole $12 million from my company and destroyed everything I'd built. Marcus, I didn't know. Didn't know what? That your mysterious lover was my brother? Or didn't know that he was using you to get to me? The accusation hit Zara like a physical blow. That's not what happened. Then tell me what had happened. Tell me how you just happened to meet my supposedly dead brother. Tell me how you just happened to walk into my restaurant 3 months pregnant with his children. Tell me how any of this is a coincidence. Zara was crying so hard she could barely speak. He told me his name was David Black. We met at a bar downtown. He bought me expensive dinners, said he was in tech, said he was falling in love with me. Then he vanished. I never knew his real name until you told me about Dylan. Marcus wanted to believe her. Every fiber of his being wanted to accept that Zara was as much a victim as he was. But the evidence painted a different picture. He's been watching us, Marcus said. The gifts, the phone calls, the photos. Dylan's been orchestrating this entire thing from the beginning. That's impossible. He disappeared months before I met you. Did he? Or did he just want you to think he disappeared? The question hung in the air like poison. Marcus's intercom buzzed. His security chief's voice crackled through. Mr. Blackwell, "We have a situation. There's someone here to see you." Says his name is Dylan Blackwell. Marcus looked at Zara, seeing his own fear reflected in her eyes. "Send him up. Would you forgive someone who let you raise another man's children?" Marcus was about to face the brother who'd taken everything from him, twice. Dylan Blackwell walked into Marcus's office like he owned the place, wearing a $1,000 suit and a smile that made Zara's stomach clench with recognition. 3 years had changed him. He was leaner, harder, with scars on his knuckles and a confidence that bordered on arrogance. "Hello, brother." Marcus didn't move from behind his desk. "I should call the FBI." "You should, but you won't." Dylan's eyes found Zara, and his expression softened. "Hello, beautiful. You look tired. Twins keeping you up at night. Stay away from her," Marcus warned. "Relax. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to explain." "Explain?" Marcus's voice could have cut glass. "Explain how you stole $12 million? Explain how you faked your death? Or explain how you seduced my wife while pretending to be someone else?" Dylan had the grace to look ashamed. "I never meant for it to go this far." "Which part? The embezzlement or the elaborate revenge plot?" "It wasn't revenge." Dylan's composure cracked for the first time. "I was protecting you." Marcus laughed bitterly. "By stealing from me? By sleeping with Zara? By letting me raise your children? That's your idea of protection?" Dylan moved to the bar and poured himself a drink without asking permission. His hands shook slightly as he lifted the glass. 3 years ago, I didn't just steal money from Technova. I stole it from some very dangerous people who'd been using our company to launder their cash. When they found out, they gave me a choice: pay back triple what I took or watch my family die slowly. Zara gasped. Marcus's expression didn't change. "So you ran?" Marcus said. "I did what I had to do to keep you alive. Those men don't make idle threats. They would have killed you just to send me a message." "And Zara? How does she fit into your heroic narrative?" Dylan's eyes found hers across the room. "She wasn't supposed to fit into anything. I was laying low, staying off the grid, and I met this incredible woman who made me forget about everything else for 2 weeks. I fell in love with her." "You abandoned her," Zara said, her voice shaking with rage. "You left me pregnant and alone with no way to contact you. Because they found me. I had to disappear again, or they would have used you against me. I thought you'd be better off without me. So you let her marry your brother instead?" Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. Dylan flinched. "I didn't plan that. When I saw the news about your engagement, I lost my mind. I've been watching you both ever since, trying to figure out how to fix this mess." "Fix it?" Marcus stood up slowly. "You think this is something you can fix? The people I owe, they're closing in. I've managed to stay ahead of them for 3 years, but they're getting desperate. If they can't find me, they'll come after you. After Zara. After the babies." Zara felt the room spin around her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that marrying Marcus was the worst thing you could have done for your safety. Being a Blackwell makes you a target." Marcus moved around the desk, getting closer to his brother. "How much do you owe them?" $50 million. With interest. $50 million? Marcus's voice rose. "You borrowed $50 million from criminals?" "I didn't borrow anything. They forced me to help them move money through Technova's accounts. When I tried to stop them, they threatened to kill you. So I took what I could and ran, hoping to draw them away from Seattle. And instead you led them right back here." Dylan nodded miserably. "They know about the twins now. They know Zara matters to me. They're going to use her to get to me." Marcus grabbed Dylan by the shirt, slamming him against the wall. "You selfish bastard. You put her in danger twice, once by seducing her, and again by disappearing." "I know." "You think I don't know that? You think I haven't been dying watching you raise my children while I hide in the shadows like a coward?" "They're not your children anymore," Marcus snarled. "You gave up that right when you abandoned them." Dylan's composure finally shattered completely. "Those are my babies, Marcus. My blood, my DNA, my..." The office lights went out. In the darkness, Zara heard the unmistakable sound of armed men moving through the building. "They found me," Dylan whispered. "How far would you go to protect the family that was built on lies?" Marcus was about to discover that some choices don't come with good options. The emergency lighting cast eerie red shadows across Marcus's office as armed men systematically cleared each floor of the Technova building. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Zara could see black SUVs surrounding the parking garage. "How many?" Marcus asked, his voice calm despite the chaos. Dylan peered through the blinds. "At least 12. Probably more waiting outside." Marcus pressed a hidden button under his desk. Steel shutters began sliding down over the windows, a security feature he'd installed after Dylan's first betrayal. The office became a fortress, but also a trap. "What do they want?" Zara whispered, clutching her phone with shaking hands. "Me," Dylan said simply, "but they'll settle for leverage." Marcus was already moving, pulling weapons from a concealed safe Zara had never noticed. "When you say leverage, they'll take you and the babies. Use you to force me out of hiding." Zara's blood turned to ice. "The babies are at home with Isabella." "Not anymore." Dylan held up his phone, showing a live feed from Marcus's penthouse. "My people got them out 20 minutes ago. They're safe." "Your people?" Marcus spun around, gun in hand. "You've been watching my home? I've been protecting it. You think those security cameras you installed last month were your idea?" "I've had teams monitoring Zara and the twins since the day they came home from the hospital." Marcus looked like he wanted to shoot his brother. "You've been violating my family's privacy. I've been keeping them alive." Dylan's voice cracked with desperation. "These people don't negotiate, Marcus. They don't take prisoners. They send messages written in blood." A voice boomed through the building's intercom system. "Dylan Blackwell, we know you're here. You have 10 minutes to come down, or we start taking pieces of your family." Zara's legs gave out. Marcus caught her before she hit the floor. "They're bluffing," Marcus said. "They need us alive to get to Dylan." "No, they don't." Dylan's face was gray with fear. "They only need pieces of us alive. Fingers, ears, video footage of screaming. They're very creative." Marcus helped Zara to a chair, then turned to face his brother. For the first time since Dylan had walked into the office, his expression wasn't filled with rage. "What do you need from me?" $50 million. Wire transfer to an offshore account. They'll take the money and disappear. "And you?" Dylan's smile was heartbreaking. "I disappear too. Permanently this time." "No." Zara's voice was stronger than she felt. "There has to be another way." "There isn't. This is the only way to keep you and the babies safe." Marcus moved to his computer, fingers flying over the keyboard. "I can transfer the money, but it'll take time to liquidate that much." Glass exploded inward as something heavy crashed through the steel shutters. Smoke filled the room. Through the chaos, Zara heard boots on marble, harsh voices shouting orders. Dylan grabbed her hand. "There's a service elevator behind the bookshelf. It goes straight to the parking garage." "What about you?" she asked. "I'll buy you time." Marcus was still typing furiously, trying to complete the transfer. "Almost there, almost." The office door exploded open. 3 men in tactical gear poured through, weapons raised. Dylan stepped in front of Zara and Marcus, hands raised. "Victor, let's talk about this like civilized people." The lead gunman smiled coldly. 3 years we've been looking for you, Dylan. Do you know how much interest accumulates on $50 million? More than I could pay. I'm guessing. $150 million, plus compensation for our time and trouble." Marcus looked up from his computer. "The original transfer is complete. $50 million. That was the deal." "The deal changed when your brother decided to play dead for 3 years." Dylan's shoulders sagged. "I don't have $150 million. "No, but your brother does. Have you ever had to trust someone who betrayed you to save your life?" Marcus was about to make a choice that would define both brothers forever. The numbers on Marcus Blackwell's computer screen might as well have been written in blood. $50 million. The price of keeping Zara and the twins alive. The price of his company's future. The price of everything he'd built since Dylan disappeared. His finger hovered over the enter key. One click would transfer half his liquid assets to criminals who'd been hunting his brother for 3 years. One click would save his family. A family built on lies, but a family nonetheless. "You don't have to do this." Zara's voice cut through the tension from across his office. She held baby Emma against her chest while Ethan slept in his carrier. The twins had no idea their lives hung in the balance of a bank transfer. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her. 6 months ago, she'd been a stranger carrying another man's children. Now she was the most important person in his world. Yes, I do. The irony wasn't lost on him. Dylan had stolen $12 million and nearly destroyed Technova. Now Marcus was willingly giving away 4 times that amount to clean up his brother's mess. The difference? This time, innocent lives were at stake. His phone buzzed. A text from the man downstairs who'd been negotiating with Dylan's creditors. 5 minutes, or we start with the woman. Marcus hit enter. The confirmation screen appeared. Transfer complete. $50 million vanished from his accounts in less time than it took to buy coffee. His company stock would crash when the quarterly reports showed the massive withdrawal. Board members would demand answers he couldn't give. Everything he'd sacrificed his personal life to build would crumble. But Emma chose that moment to grab his finger with her tiny hand, and Marcus felt something he'd never experienced in all his years of corporate victories. Peace. It's done, he announced to the room. Dylan, who'd been pacing like a caged animal, stopped mid-step. The relief on his face was almost painful to watch. Marcus, don't. Marcus held up his hand. Don't thank me. Don't apologize. Just disappear again. Only this time, stay gone. But the universe had other plans. As if summoned by the drama, Marcus's phone exploded with notifications. News alerts. Stock prices plummeting. Emergency board meeting called. Someone had leaked the story. Breaking. Tech billionaire Marcus Blackwell's secret twin brother alive, father of wife's children. The headline felt like a punch to the gut. Marcus scrolled through the article, watching his carefully constructed life disintegrate in real time. Photos of Dylan entering the building. Speculation about the twins' paternity. Questions about corporate fraud and family deception. How did they Zara started? Doesn't matter now. Marcus set his phone aside, decision crystallizing in his mind. If we're going to face this, we face it on our terms. 20 minutes later, Marcus stood behind a podium in Technova's main conference room, facing a sea of reporters and camera flashes. Zara sat in the front row, the twins on either side of her in their carriers. Dylan had vanished again, as expected. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus began, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. I'm here to address the speculation surrounding my family. A reporter shouted from the back. Is it true the children aren't yours? Marcus looked directly into the camera. Biology doesn't make a father. Love does. Commitment does. Being there at 3 a.m. when they're crying does. By every measure that matters, Emma and Ethan are my children. But what about the DNA? What about it? Marcus's voice carried the authority that had built an empire. I fed them, changed them, held them when they were sick, and I'll do it every day for the rest of their lives. That's what makes someone a father. The questions kept coming, but Marcus deflected each one with the same message. Family isn't about genetics. Love is a choice, not an accident of birth. But the real shock came when he announced his next move. Effective immediately, I'm stepping down as CEO of Technova to focus on my family. The board has my full support in choosing my successor. The room erupted. Reporters shouted over each other. Camera flashes strobed like lightning. Marcus had just voluntarily given up control of the company he'd built from nothing. Zara's eyes widened in shock. This wasn't part of any plan they discussed. Marcus was sacrificing more than money. He was sacrificing his identity, his life's work, his entire sense of self. As security escorted them out through the chaos, Zara grabbed his arm. Marcus, what have you done? He looked down at the twins, then back at her. What should have done months ago? I chose what matters. But as they reached their car, a reporter shoved a microphone in Zara's face. Mrs. Blackwell, how does it feel knowing your husband gave up billions for children that aren't his? Zara's response would be replayed on every news channel for weeks. He didn't give up anything. He gained everything that matters. And those children, they're luckier than any kids in the world to have Marcus Blackwell as their father. The question was, would love and sacrifice be enough to hold their family together when the whole world was watching it fall apart? 3 months after the press conference that destroyed Marcus's corporate empire, He found himself in a place he'd never expected, completely, utterly happy. The Seattle penthouse had been sold to cover legal fees and company obligations. Their new home in Queen was a fraction of the size, but it felt more like a family residence than the cold glass tower ever had. Marcus sat in the nursery at 2 a.m., feeding Emma her bottle while Ethan slept peacefully in his crib. This was his life now. No board meetings, no hostel tacovers, no 18-hour workdays. Just the simple rhythm of family life that he'd never imagined could be so fulfilling. "You're getting good at that." Zara appeared in the doorway, exhaustion and affection mixing in her voice. She'd started nursing school at Seattle University, fulfilling the dream that had driven her to this city in the first place. Who knew a billionaire could master baby formula? Marcus gently burped Emma, who rewarded him with a content sigh. "Former billionaire," Zara corrected, settling into the rocking chair beside him. "Former billionaire, current diaper expert." He placed Emma in her crib, marveling at how such a small person had completely reorganized his priorities. The financial reality was harsh, but manageable. Marcus had retained enough assets to keep them comfortable, though their lifestyle had changed dramatically. Gone were the private jets and five-star restaurants. In their place, family dinners at home, walks in the park, and the strange luxury of unscheduled time. "Do you regret it?" Zara asked the question that had been hanging between them for months. Marcus considered his answer carefully. He'd lost Technova. His net worth had dropped from billions to mere millions. Former colleagues avoided him at social events. Business publications had written scathing analyses of his corporate suicide. "Ask me when I'm changing my 15th diaper of the day," he said finally. Zara laughed, and the sound filled something in Marcus he hadn't realized was empty. This was what he'd been missing during all those years of conquest and accumulation, genuine human connection. But their new life wasn't without challenges. The media attention had been brutal initially, with photographers camping outside their home and strangers recognizing them in grocery stores. Zara had needed therapy to process the guilt she carried about destroying Marcus's career. Marcus struggled with his identity outside of corporate success. The hardest part was the silence from Dylan. 3 months without contact. No calls, no letters, no acknowledgement of the sacrifice Marcus had made. It was as if his brother had vanished as completely as he had 3 years earlier. "I got the DNA results back," Zara said quietly. Marcus looked up sharply. They'd been waiting for confirmation about the pregnancy she discovered during their most turbulent period. The child they conceived during their marriage, not before it. "And definitely yours." She placed his hand on her growing belly. No confusion this time. The relief was overwhelming. Not because Marcus loved the twins any less, but because this child would be theirs from the beginning. No secrets, no complicated paternity questions, no outside claims. "How do you feel about having 3 kids under 2? Zara asked. Terrified, Marcus admitted, and excited, and completely unprepared. "Good thing you've had practice." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the twins' steady breathing. Outside, Seattle's skyline glittered with the lights of buildings Marcus used to own or influence. Inside, he held everything that truly mattered. "I need to tell you something," Zara said, her voice carrying a weight that made Marcus alert. "What is it?" "Dylan called me yesterday." The admission hit Marcus like cold water. "What did he say?" "He wants to meet the twins." He's been in rehab, really committed this time. 6 months clean, steady job, apartment in Portland. He wants to be part of their lives. Marcus felt familiar anger rising. After everything they'd been through, after the sacrifice he'd made, Dylan wanted to waltz back in and play father to children he'd abandoned. "What did you tell him?" "I told him I'd talk to you." The old Marcus would have refused immediately. The corporate Marcus who saw relationships as zero-sum games, who protected his territory at all costs. But holding Emma in his arms had changed something fundamental in his worldview. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think," Zara chose her words carefully, "I think the twins deserve to know their biological father. But only if he's really changed, and only if we set clear boundaries." Marcus understood the logic but emotionally, the idea of sharing the children felt like another loss. Hadn't he given up enough? Hadn't he earned the right to be their only father? But as he looked at Emma's peaceful face, he realized this decision wasn't about him. It was about what was best for her and Ethan. One meeting, he said finally, supervised, if he proves he's serious about being in their lives consistently, we'll consider more. Zara squeezed his hand. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If he hurts them, or you, in any way, rehab won't save him from me. As they prepared for bed, Marcus wondered if he was making another costly mistake. But looking at Zara, seeing the hope in her eyes, he realized that sometimes the biggest risk was refusing to take one at all. The question was, could Dylan prove he'd changed as much as they had? The coffee shop in Fremont was neutral territory, far enough from their home to feel safe, public enough to prevent drama, quiet enough for conversation. Marcus arrived 15 minutes early, scanning the room like he was preparing for a hostile takeover instead of meeting his brother. Zara wheeled the double stroller through the entrance, Emma and Ethan babbling contentedly after their afternoon nap. At 8 months old, they developed distinct personalities that reminded Marcus daily of why this meeting mattered. Emma was fearless, reaching for everything within her grasp. Ethan was contemplative, studying faces with serious concentration. He's not here yet, Marcus said, checking his watch. Punctuality had always been Dylan's weakness, even before the gambling and the embezzlement. He'll come. Zara's confidence surprised him. She'd spoken with Dylan several times over the past month, carefully arranging this meeting while Marcus wrestled with his feelings about it. Then Dylan walked through the door, and Marcus felt like he was looking at a ghost of himself. His twin brother had always been the mirror image. Same height, same build, same features that had confused teachers and girlfriends throughout their youth. But the man approaching their table looked different. Thinner, yes, but also more solid somehow. The restless energy that had always radiated from Dylan seemed calmer, more focused. Marcus! Dylan stopped 3 feet from the table, uncertainty replacing his usual swagger. Dylan! The brothers studied each other across the distance. 3 years of anger and betrayal, creating an invisible wall between them. Finally, Dylan's gaze shifted to the stroller. Are those Emma and Ethan? Zara said gently, lifting Emma onto her lap. Emma, this is Dylan. The introduction hung awkwardly in the air. How do you explain complicated paternity to an 8-month-old? How do you introduce a father who's been absent since before birth? Dylan's composure cracked as he looked at his daughter. Emma studied him with the same serious expression Ethan was known for, as if recognizing something familiar in his features. Then she smiled. That radiant, innocent smile that could melt the coldest heart. She looks like Mom, Dylan whispered, tears threatening at the corners of his eyes. Marcus felt his own emotions shift. Their mother had died when they were teenagers, and seeing her reflected in Emma's face created an unexpected bridge between the brothers. Would it be okay if I held her? Zara looked to Marcus, who gave the slightest nod. She placed Emma in Dylan's arms, and something fundamental changed in the atmosphere. Dylan held his daughter like she was made of glass, studying every detail of her face. Emma, fearless as always, grabbed his nose and giggled. The sound broke something open in Dylan that had been locked away for years. I'm so sorry, he said, and Marcus realized he wasn't just talking to the baby. I'm sorry I wasn't here. I'm sorry I missed everything. I'm sorry I caused so much pain. Sorry doesn't fix the damage, Marcus said, but his voice lacked its usual edge. I know. Dylan shifted Emma to one arm and reached into his jacket. But maybe this is a start. He placed a cashier's check on the table. Marcus glanced at the amount and felt his breath catch. $50 million, exactly what he'd paid to Dylan's creditors. How did you? I've been working. Construction mostly. Saved every penny I could. Sold everything I owned. Took out loans against future earnings. Dylan's voice was steady but exhausted. It took me this long to pay back what you sacrificed. Marcus stared at the check. $50 million represented financial security, the ability to rebuild his company, a return to the life he'd known. But it also represented something else, proof that Dylan had changed, that the brother he'd lost might actually be worth saving. "I don't want your money," Marcus said finally. "It's not my money. It's yours. It was always yours." "Then I don't want it back." Dylan looked confused. "Marcus, this could restore everything you lost." "I didn't lose anything that mattered." Marcus looked at Zara, then at the twins. "I found something better." The truth of that statement surprised even him. 6 months ago, he would have killed for the financial resources that check represented. Now, it felt like a relic from someone else's life. "Keep the money," Marcus continued. "Set up college funds for Emma and Ethan. Or donate it to gambling addiction programs. Or invest it for their futures. I don't care, but I'm not taking it back." Dylan's eyes widened. "You're serious." "I've never been more serious about anything." Ethan began fussing in his stroller, and Dylan instinctively reached for him. The boy settled immediately in his biological father's arms, as if recognizing something essential. "They're incredible," Dylan said softly. "They are." Marcus felt his protective instincts warring with something unexpected: pride. These children were worth fighting for, worth protecting, worth loving, regardless of genetics. "I want to be part of their lives," Dylan said. "Not to replace you. God knows you've been more of a father to them than I ever was. But I want them to know me. I want to earn the right to be in their world." Marcus looked at his brother holding both twins, saw the genuine love and regret in his expression, and made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself.